This movie begins with Paul Andre, a middle-aged man, sitting on the balcony of his mansion. Leon, his steward, approaches him with a glass of water and his medication. Leon is concerned about the mental health of his boss, so he reminds him of the doctor's advice to stop listening to sad music. Paul Andre argues that what he's listening to isn't sad, but pathetic music, claiming that there's a difference. Leon tries to politely argue his point, stating pathetic music is dark music, but not sad music. Well, Paul Andre thinks the world itself is dark. He shows Leon a newspaper with a terrible headline to buttress his point. He then takes all but one of his medications, stating that it makes him depressed. When he asks when he'll be done with the routine, Leon tells him that it will take a while before he stops it. That day, Violette, a young blonde, walks into a shopping mall. Having a sinister motive, she walks speedily to get some items. Violette then hides an item in a different bag, hoping to successfully shoplift. At the payment desk, a security man notices her tense demeanor. Suspecting foul play, he walks up to her and apprehends her. A scuffle ensues between Violette and the security man. As they battle, she keeps mentioning that she'd rather steal to feed than beg anyone. She thinks it's more honorable. Violette then ends up knocking the man out. That same day, Violette is paraded after a court ruling. She tells the gentleman of the press that she was only stealing to feed her family. She holds her family in high regard and wouldn't let anything bad happen to them. She thinks she's only being victimized to get her separated from her family. Paul Andre watches the fiasco on TV. He's drawn to Violette's charm and the pain she's going through. Paul Andre is almost teary when Violette mentions that no one is truly anything without their family and their love. Violette is finally released. She gets home, and in no time, Leon is at her door. He has a message from Paul Andre. Paul Andre has an offer for Violette. He wants Violette to accompany Leon back. The prospect sounds exciting, so she obliges him. Violette meets with Paul Andre, and he immediately starts talking. He was a software developer who devoted all his life to his work. Now he's no longer interested in that and has sold his software. Violette cuts in, mentioning how Paul Andre now has enough money to take care of himself till he leaves Earth. Paul Andre wouldn't see it that way. He takes a device that works like a vacuum cleaner and uses it for Violette to see. He then goes on to say that he worked a lot and never had time to raise a family. Now to the proposal. He promises to pay off all of Violette's debt, pay her wages for 1 year, and make sure her kids aren't taken away from her, only if she lets him be a part of her family. Violette is bewildered. She's lost for words as to why a man his age would make such a proposal, and ultimately rejects the offer. On her way home, Leon tells her that Paul Andre is a good man. She abhors the idea of the proposal, but as she sips champagne while being driven in a Maybach, she imagines that all her debts are wiped off. In a moment, she's back at Paul Andre's mansion, stating her terms before she accepts the proposal. Paul Andre will do all he has to do to associate with a family. He's sure that Violette is the right person. Before she leaves, she finds out Paul Andre doesn't have the intention of having a sexual relationship with her. This calms her down and makes her see Paul Andre's proposal in a different and better light. One of Violette's terms states that it is Paul Andre who will come live with her and her kids. The drive to Violette's place is near traumatic for Paul Andre. Paul Andre has never had to be in such a ghetto-like environment. In Violette's home, Paul Andre is seated like a child who's about to learn a new life hack. While Auguste, Violette's son, runs around the house playing, Lucie, Violette's daughter, starts asking questions. Lucie wants to know how her mom met Paul Andre. Paul Andre then lies that they bumped into each other at the employment office after he first saw her on TV. This infers that Paul Andre is rich, so Auguste requests that Paul Andre shower them with gifts, starting with an Xbox game. Violette shuts that down. She mistakenly calls Paul Andre Mr., and this draws the kids' attention. Paul Andre and Violette laugh it off, stating it was just a joke. Their real task will be to make Auguste and Lucie believe that whatever they have is real. To sway the kids' projections, he offers to take them to their favorite spot in town. They go to the theater. As the actors do their thing, Auguste acts out a fight, and this upsets Lucie. Paul Andre is having a hard time managing the noise of the show, and Auguste. He then mentions how he was sent to a boarding school by his mom after his dad left. Sadly, he grew up without family love. They are home, and Paul Andre is wondering why their clothes are littered all over. Well, raising kids is never easy. Auguste wants bedtime stories from Paul Andre. Paul Andre grudgingly obliges and tells Auguste a scary story. The chaos in the house doesn't end, and this drives Paul Andre crazy. He almost gets Leon to come save him, but the plan fails. In the bedroom, Paul Andre picks a book to read, his usual tradition to fall asleep. As they lay on different sides of the same bed, Violette acknowledges Paul Andre is weird. She goes on to ask Paul-Andre his sexual preference, considering the terms of the contract don't involve sex. Well, contrary to Violette's thought, Paul-Andre isn't gay and isn't impotent either. Violette does everything to make her kids believe that she's in love with Paul-Andre. With everyone leaving the house, Violette advises Paul-Andre to walk Auguste to school. On their way, Auguste tells him that he is bad at mathematics, so Paul-Andre promises to help him. At the school's entrance, Auguste kisses Paul-Andre goodbye on the cheek. This puts a big smile on Paul-Andre's face, possibly the first kiss from a child for him. Later that day, Paul-Andre is home with Auguste. He tries to teach him math, but Auguste's wandering mind won't let him learn. This gets Paul-Andre agitated, and he begins screaming at the top of his lungs. Violette meets them in that state, but Auguste claims that Paul-Andre hasn't done anything wrong. Paul-Andre has done well in teaching him. That evening, Violette suggests they go to the mall to buy some groceries. Paul-Andre hasn't gone grocery shopping since God knows when. Lucy deduces that Paul-Andre must be a really weird guy. She asks how they met, and their explanations further confuse the kids. Violette tries to make it real by touching Paul-Andre, but it makes Paul-Andre very uneasy instead. That evening, Violette scolds Paul-Andre for keeping the news of his mom being alive away from him. Now calm, she prepares to go out. She met a man earlier in the day and wants to go have sex with him. With Violette still out, Auguste pleads to spend the night with Paul-Andre. As they sleep, Violette returns home very drunk. The next morning, Paul-Andre reminds Violette of the planned shopping, but Violette reveals that she's doing a job trial with the person she slept with the previous night. She then asks Paul-Andre to go ahead and do the shopping. Paul-Andre decides to put his free time to good use. He helps clean the house and take out the trash. The kids return from school, and Lucy finds it annoying that Paul-Andre has touched her things. Paul-Andre, now agitated, raises his voice at them for being so untidy in the first place. He expects gratitude for doing them a favor. Violette returns in the heat of Paul-Andre's agitation and walks straight into her room. Lucy and Auguste do the same, leaving Paul-Andre standing alone. When Paul-Andre asks, Violette confirms that the guy she slept with previously is only a jerk. Violette is ashamed of herself. She feels like a prostitute already. The next day, Paul-Andre accompanies Violette to her family picnic. Every member of the family playfully picks on Violette's childhood dream of becoming a personal assistant. They say she lacks the brains for that. They laugh at their jokes, but Paul doesn't find them funny. He is pricked, so he peeks up for Violette. Violette stops him though. He can't tell her family how to have fun. Paul-Andre asserts that these things weaken her confidence. He can't just sit there, so he goes on a walk to vent. On their way home, the argument lingers. Paul-Andre asks to alight from the car. When he does, Violette follows him, seeking to sort the issue out. Paul-Andre doesn't think he can go on with the contract. He thinks the idea of a family that Violette inadvertently sold to him isn't what Violette has portrayed. The matter remains unresolved, making Violette drive off and leaving Paul-Andre on the lonely road. 3 weeks have passed, and Paul-Andre hasn't left his mansion. Leon then advises that he go back to Violette. This time, he wants Paul-Andre to be more assertive as the man that he is and take charge. The next day, Paul-Andre goes back to Violette. He informs them that they'll have to obey him as the head of the family. They'll also have to carefully keep their stuff and stop littering the house. He also proposes 200 euros pocket money for the kids, but Violette makes him reduce it to 100 euros. That evening, Violette is set to go on a date. Paul-Andre says no to it. Violette explains that she has a life to live. Besides, they're not having sex, and she finds it hard to stay long without having sex. Paul-Andre calmly mentions that he is aware it isn't stipulated in the contract that they could have sex, like something hit her emotionally. Violette is turned on by the sound of that. She drops her bag, turns on a soft tune from the cassette player, and proceeds to kiss Paul-Andre. Paul-Andre, who hasn't made love in ages, is naive. After a while of unemotional kissing on his part, he apologizes and excuses himself. The next morning, Remy, Violette's brother, shows up. He wants Violette to go run some errands for him, but Paul-Andre refuses to let her do it. He says they must stick to their plan of shopping for groceries that day. Remy tries to guilt-trip Violette into making her do his bidding, but Violette resonates with Paul-Andre's stance. Remy storms out angrily, and the contractual couple goes shopping. Paul-Andre wants them to go see his mom, neglecting Violette's family picnic. He decides to drive in a bid to show that he's in charge. Violette notices that Paul-Andre is only trying to take charge and be a proper family head, and this excites her. They all sing happily on their way. Paul-Andre takes them to a fancy hotel where they have a nice meal. At the table, Violette mentions the nice things she's experienced since Paul-Andre entered her life. Irene, Paul-André's mom, welcomes them in. She keeps going on and on about how Paul-André doesn't need someone like Violette. Paul-André's single ex, Sandra, enters on Irene's invitation. Auguste mistakenly hits Irene with a ball. While they nurse Irene, she makes sure to praise Sandra's achievements to Violette's hearing. Violette feels bold enough to talk about herself too. Sadly, she talks about the time she was arrested. Paul-André quickly dismisses it. Violette takes it that Paul-André is ashamed of her, so she goes on a walk. Paul-André meets her at the old dilapidated pavilion and talks to her. Shortly, Paul-André begins professing his love for Violette. He has always wanted to profess his love for the woman of his dreams in the pavilion. The two then laugh and share a kiss there. Back in the house, Violette's phone won't stop ringing. Lucy answers it, and Remy, the caller, begins narrating how he found the contract. Paul-André and Violette come back to find the kids sad. Lucy doesn't believe that what they have now is real, even after explanations. She never wants to see Paul-André again. She makes her mom choose between Paul-André and her. The next few days, Violette is sad and downcast. She cries, and her kids watch helplessly. Even after Remy reminds her that she has clinched her first wedding decorations job, she has no excitement in her to share. Remy and Lucy decide to step in and save Violette from drowning. That evening, Remy takes Lucy to Paul-André's house. The next morning, Lucy shows up with Paul-André. Violette is shocked to see him. She wonders why Paul-André has returned, considering that they're in different economic classes. She's sure things would still fall apart, but Paul-André doesn't think that would be the case. He thinks they can all work something out. So far, they get along well. A mild back and forth ensues as they discuss how endless their ups and downs seem. It soon turns playful as Paul-André and Violette hold hands, surrendering to the pull of their hearts.